This past weekend, I played some Squad, but it was a different kind of Squad. This is Galactic Contention. Imagine packaging up Star Wars Battlefront and implementing it into Squad. That's pretty much what you get. It's a melding of the mechanics of Squad, but with Star Wars. Now, Galactic Contention has been around for a while, but they've been offline for a bit as they've updated the mod to accommodate the Unreal 5 engine that Squad has moved to. And now it's back live and available for you to play. And this is a significant mod. It's massive. In fact, it's almost 50 gigs. It's basically a game within itself. And that's important because while you may find some things recognizable or familiar, it's not just a reskin. It is a significant undertaking. So let's dive into a little bit of my experience with it. But first, of course, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with your thoughts if you checked out Galactic Contention or intend to. You can support the channel by hitting the join button down below the video to become a member on YouTube, or you can use my code SLAVE3K30 at the link in the description below for 30% off of a game key for you or a friend. Now, real quick, if you are interested in trying the mod, you will need the base game of Squad. You'll need to navigate to the workshop and find the Galactic Contention mod, which I'll link down below if you would like to try it. Then you can go into the server browser and find servers hosting the mod. I actually played on unnamed servers this past weekend, which right now, at the recording of this video, they have a European and a North American server available to play. Now, of course, I've played some Star Wars Battlefront, but I've never really dove into Galactic Contention until now. And while I'm a fan of the Star Wars franchise, I certainly have a lot of stuff I don't know in terms of all the blasters and different things that you can access within the mod or Battlefront itself. So you shouldn't expect as much information on weaponry as much as you should expect a little bit about my experience in playing this. And what's really impressive about this mod is just the scale. The fact that this mod is so massive, it doesn't feel just like a reskin of a few things. It feels like an immersive experience on its own. In fact, the listing on the Steam Workshop says that they have over 20 maps, 175 layers, 150 unit types, 15 factions, and over 25 vehicle types, along with commander assets that are specific to the mod. And at first when you dive in, it may be kind of overwhelming because icons have changed, weaponry's changed. You don't really know necessarily what everything is unless you have that Star Wars background. It's such an odd combination of Squad, the mechanics and certain things that we're used to, while also just labeled entirely differently with slightly different functionality. For example, you're used to seeing a HAB, but now some HABs have force fields around them. You're used to seeing riflemen with various weaponry, but all the weapons are blasters. Which, to be honest, has a really cool effect across a map. Just seeing all of these laser tracers flying around was part of the experience. Now, once I spawned in as infantry, I started to really feel the Squad mechanics at play because it slowed everything down and grounded things. Typically, when I've played the more recent Battlefronts, they've been fun for a little while, but I get tired of the kind of run, die, repeat. This now felt similar to Squad. When you're running around, you feel a little bit heavier and you feel like there's a little bit more value in trying to stay alive. And fundamentally, it's just the pace is different. The pace does not match Star Wars Battlefront, especially the more recent ones where it's at a breakneck pace. This feels a little bit leaning back towards Squad because you do feel slower. You do feel like you have some weight. And what's interesting, though, is when you start getting into some of the gunfights, you see that there's a little bit more of a casual aspect to it. It takes multiple blaster hits to actually kill an opponent. So while you may have more of the Squad pacing in terms of movement and stuff like that, when you start fighting, it feels a little more arcadey. It's this weird combination of two very different things. I found myself doing something where I was actually hitting a target with my blaster, and then I'd wait a second to see if they would move again because I'm used to maybe 1 to 2 shots to take down an opponent. Now I'm having to shoot 4 or 5 potentially. That, and of course, my accuracy with the blasters just seemingly was awful. But I think if you ever felt like Star Wars Battlefront was way too fast-paced and a little bit monotonous in its own way of just being kind of run and die, this, again, offers a very different experience. And there's buildable things and stuff like that that you expect from Squad implemented into here, like turrets and whatnot. And if you are into Star Wars, you're going to see a lot of the things you've seen in various media from Star Wars actually implemented into this mod, which is also pretty cool. Now, outside of gunplay and just infantry combat, I did find another aspect of this that stood out to me, and that was often having to do with strategy and game knowledge. What's interesting is I think you have a lot of folks diving into Galactic Contention that have very little hours in Squad. They just seemed less familiar with the game mechanics from Squad versus understanding a lot of the things about Star Wars, which is kind of an interesting situation because it does require base game of Squad to even play this. So you'd expect a lot of people to have knowledge, but it seems to be bringing people to the game that maybe are just wanting something Battlefront-esque that might be a little bit slower paced or different. Now, I didn't jump into many vehicles except as someone jumping in to just be transported somewhere, but it is interesting to see the variety of vehicles in the game that, once again, you're in squad, but you're seeing something completely outside of what you would normally see. You're basically having to learn a whole new language in something that seems so familiar. Because I was joining squads, I was double checking my map to make sure I was in the right vehicle and to make sure it was a logistics vehicle or whatever we were trying to hop into. It was kind of funny to see how folks would operate across the map, maybe dropping rallies in places that they would typically utilize like you would in squad, but it's just such a different atmosphere. And what's interesting about that atmosphere is it is quite immersive. I really enjoyed some of the evening maps and such that had glowing vegetation. I thought that created a different kind of experience that we're not super used to. It was also cool seeing so many things in the sky or around you that were just utilized as props to drive up that immersion. And I think that's a really critical component for this mod. If you don't push some of that immersion very heavily and create a world for you to operate in, it's going to be a really tough sell. We don't want just a reskin squad. You need all the vehicles and you need the atmosphere, the massive ships hovering above you or crashed into the ground, the different vehicles available to your squads to operate across the map, and of course sound effects and things like that. While you may notice some sound effects that you recognize from squad, there are certainly plenty that feel new or specific to this mod. This is the beauty of modding for games, and I think this is why it's so important for games like Squad to have a strong modding community that is supported by devs, because it gives so much freedom to what we're used to with Squad. There's a strong desire from the community to have this mod available. People have been waiting on it to release, and I know that this past weekend servers were loaded with queues and people trying to jump in. Much like the video I did on the Germany mod and, of course, Super mod, I wanted to take a peek at this because it really shows the creativity and the ability modders have to just create completely different environments or different assets for this game that we know pretty well. It's just kind of wild to be booting up Squad on my PC to play Star Wars. I think if you are interested in Battlefront, if you're interested in Squad, if you like Star Wars, that combination will all play really well here. There's some new mechanics and things like that introduced. There's some fun stuff, everything from night vision to proximity chat and plenty more. Obviously, all the vehicles and stuff like that might drive up some nostalgia from plenty of media from the franchise of Star Wars itself. The scope and scale of this mod is impressive. Shout out to the modders who helped do this. You are really kind of immersed into a different experience. While there is plenty of similarities there, you start to not think about that as much. I had a lot of fun working with a couple squads, jumping around a little bit, and playing. It, again, reminded me somewhat of a slower paced Battlefront, which I think is kind of welcomed. But I know this isn't going to appeal to everybody. I think my personal thought here is that the gunplay sometimes feels like it's trying to decide whether it wants to be more squad-like or more Battlefront-like, more arcade in its implementation. And I kind of just think it needs to lean in one way or the other, probably more arcade. And then with that, though, the pace feels different. So does that make sense, you know? Or does that just throw off something else? I'm not sure. I think when you see modders take opportunities to create these environments and stuff like that, it makes you wonder what could be in base game Squad. And that becomes problematic because you see different visions and different ideas of what could be implemented. And something that stood out to me too is watching two spaceships fight each other, and you're kind of like watching this happen, and how does this fit within Squad itself? How do the mechanics work? And it doesn't feel quite like it's supposed to be there to some extent. Like you're watching a dogfight happen above you, and you're then wondering if even attack helicopters make sense in base game Squad. I had a lot of fun checking this out, and I do think folks should jump on and try this, especially if you have any interest in Battlefront, Star Wars, and all that jazz, or just a different way to play the game. This is an exceptional example of just seeing modders take a game and just turning it into something completely different. So those are my general impressions of what I experienced my first time jumping into Galactic Contention. Maybe we'll do some more coverage down the road a bit, but I just wanted to dive in and see what it was like because I know that there's a ton of interest in this. So down below, be sure to like the video, drop a comment down below whether you are going to give it a shot and try it out. And of course, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you all next time.